Hey guys, welcome to TST Garage. I'm Bart, and in this video, I'll be demonstrating how to configure and install the TST Industries Elite-1 Fender Eliminator on Ducati Street Fighter and Panigale series bikes. What you see in front of me are two modules that comprise the Fender Eliminator. Here's the closeout module that closes out the hole left behind by the removal of the fender. It can be used on its own if you're not mounting a license plate on there, and if you just go into the track and you want to close out the hole, this is what you'll install. It is available separately, or it is also available as a combination of these two kits. This module here will assemble into a hinged assembly that holds your license plate light, and potentially signals if you're going to use signals with this configuration. I'll show you how to pre-configure this, mount it on the bike with the use of the closeout, and we'll keep it moving. Since we here at TST Industries sell our products as modules, we also do video installations as modules. In this particular case, we will lump in the installation process for the license plate light in this video because it kind of interacts in some of the steps. So we'll just lump that in. Just know that if you wish to use our license plate light with this setup, you will need to drop it into your cart because that is a separate module. One additional thought here before we move on to the installation flow. When you ditch the OEM Fender, you're ditching your mounting locations for your signals and also their connection. So something will have to be done about that. At TST Industries, we typically offer integrated taillights and various types of signaling equipment. So we will have separate videos showing you how to install those components. You could find those on our website, tstindustries.com, within the appropriate product page for each part, or our YouTube channel. You can find that there also. All right, let's talk about the installation here. Before I pre-configure this, I want to let you guys know that if any of the steps portrayed in this video are a little confusing or ambiguous, you could download and print out one of these assembly sheets from the product page of this product, and that'll help guide you in what I'm showing here on the table. So in this video, I'll be guiding you through the process on the Street Fighter version of the V2, but the process will be exactly the same on the Panigale version of the bike. So let's begin. We're gonna start the process on the table here. We're gonna do some pre-configuration so that we have actual module chunks that can then be just bolted up to the bike. Here you see the closeout module. It does come with its own screws here in case you are not using it with a setup like this. So these screws will only be for the purpose of mounting the closeout to the bike without these components. Since we are showing how to install this all together, those are gonna go to the side and we're not gonna use them. This plug here is meant to close off this hole in case you're not running any wires. That would go and get pressed in all the way to that surface. And then this would be mounted on the bike if you're running only a closeout, or with these parts if you're running a license plate bracket with a closeout. So we're gonna leave this open because we are going to be installing the license plate light. And for the moment, I'm gonna push this to the side and focus only on the pre-configuration of these components into a chunk. Here we have a hinge boss. If you notice, it does have protruding shoulders coming off, meant to interface with the L bracket round holes, like so. When this is superimposed here, it creates a hinge point. So that would go together like this. And then we will superimpose the flat bracket over this here. Using the innermost holes, we will fasten that with the short countersunk screws through the innermost holes here, through the L brackets. And on the back side, we will use these nylock locking nuts. We do have a channel in here that these fit into. So the nut side of this bolted connection will be toolless. We will only be using a 3mm Allen hex key from the outside on these. The shorter M6 screws with washers are meant to connect the L bracket to the hinge. There are two sets provided. And then the longer M5 screws are the leftover fasteners that will connect this whole chunk through the hinge, through the closeout, into the bike. Now that I've gone through all the functions of the fasteners, let's actually configure this into the appropriate chunk. I'm using a Vibratite VC3 plastic safe thread locking compound, because this will live in proximity of this thermoplastic closeout. And if we use a typical thread locking agent that is meant for mechanical connections, it's anaerobic, that typically leads to crazing and internal cracking of thermoplastic. So we don't want to use that. VC3 is what we are going to be making use of here. I'm going to prep all of my fasteners before I actually fasten them into the components. These countersunk screws do not require Vibratite because they are fastened into Nylock locking nuts. Those nuts themselves have a locking feature within them, so we'll not need a locking method on them, just the machine screw connections. All right, here we go. Those are ready. I'm going to start with the hinge. As you can see, I have this component sloped this way, connecting to the hinge like so. Washer and screw will make that connection for us here. This will require a 4mm Allen hex key. We'll get that down to bottom and then back off just a tiny little bit to preserve some adjustability here. We'll lock that down at the very, very end. Opposite side, screw washer. And best practice here is to make sure that the actual L bracket is on the shoulder of that hinge before turning that screw down to the bottom. All right, I've left a little bit of adjustability, but now these guys are a little loose for me. So I'm gonna put them flat on the table and tighten down just a little bit more, just for the time being. This will make the rest of the assembly a little bit easier. Like I mentioned before, innermost hull, small countersunk screw through the slot here. I'm gonna penetrate through the backside by the slot. Now that the thread is engaged, we'll need to sink this nut geometry into that channel and hold it there. Use a 3mm Allen to get that down close to bottom, leave adjustability. Repeat on the other side. Okay, so now it's a matter of centering this on the flat bracket or the reverse of that. What we're trying to do is align the center line of this component with the center line of this component. You can do that visually. You can actually see through the middle hole the alignment versus the end of these brackets. So you can get that centered visually and then lock it down. And now I'm just going to apply a little bit more torque to make sure it's locked down all the way. And now we have this chunk ready to go. These protruding bosses from the hinge interface with these inner boss wells. And once we take the bike apart, I'll show you how to get this componentry into the bike and then use these screws to fasten it on there. All right, now let's talk about the license plate light in combination with these components. If you are mounting our license plate light or any center mounted light, these steps will be helpful. For this particular product, we decided to go with a separate connector that is plug and playable to the harness of the bike. And then this accepts the wires from the license plate light. This way we don't have to outfit the license plate light with a big connector that then potentially has us make a bigger hole in the closeout. We don't want that. We want a cosmetically congruent closeout with the bike. So you'll need to use this harness with the license plate light, yellow to red, black to black, like so. These will cinch down, you plug this in, and it's pretty simple. The only ambiguous thing at this point is probably the routing of the wire. Our license plate light sits center here and gets sandwiched between the flat bracket and license plate itself. The wire will need to be routed through here. I typically go through this window, and if need be, because of this cutout, you can actually accomplish a zip tie connection here between the wire and the aluminum component. So ultimately, this will sit like this, route through here, up through the closeout, and total assembly here will look something like this. Once we get on the bike, I will show you how to get this connected and the sequence of events that need to take place to get this routed and connected properly. Let's go rip down the bike and I'll show you how to get those steps done. Let's begin the teardown by removing the license plate and saving the hardware that will mount the license plate back on the new setup. Now using a 4mm Allen, I'll be removing these 4 fasteners. 1, 2, 3, 4. There are only 4 holes in the bottom of this fender, so they'll be very easy to locate. Once you get to the 4th one, you'll need to support the fender with your hand, otherwise it'll just drop off. Now we have the fender loose, and it comes down typically with connectors either still in their keepers here. There are 3 keepers for the 3 connectors, or like in this case, they did pop out because of the tension here. So we do need to remove these connectors. They are JST micro connectors. On the male socket, there is a tab that you press. You can press that with your nail, and that'll depress a detent in this window, permitting it to come out. So the license plate light connector connects in one way, and then on the signals, you have the opposite configuration where the male is on the bike side and female is on the side of the fender. But it's the same idea. You press the tab in and that releases. In case your configuration only entails doing the closeout, you'll take the wiring hole cover cap, press it in until it seats, get your connectors back in place here, and there's a tab here on the closeout that needs to engage above this lip here. And then you push this entire assembly forward until everything snaps into location. And then at that point, you would use those shorter screws that I showed on the table, using a 3mm Allen key. Get those seated in there. Do 1, 2, and that would be your entire assembly. If you are using one of our license plate light systems, I'm going to start the next step by using this harness for bike connection. We're going to kink it here 180 degrees like so. Get it in through here and back up and out through here. And I'm going to make the connection here to the license plate light connector, and I'm going to seat this away in the center. Now that we have this extra flexibility here, we can pass this gray connector through this compartment, and then out of the bottom of that panel. Now this will present our connection for the license plate light. Bring the toggles up, that's ready for the connection. I'm gonna bring my assembly into view again. So you can see I superimposed the license plate bracket assembly into the closeout. I have my license plate light mounted or positioned here and routed like I explained in our tables section. Now we'll make the connection and test the functionality before we move any further. The routing of the wire will go through the center here for this pocket. We need to get it all the way to the bottom and then back up here. We'll make that connection to these toggles. Again, red to yellow, black to black. And you'll need to ensure that you actually bottom these out, but don't push them so hard that you end up distorting the ends. Okay, now I feel bottom here. I'm gonna close the toggles down. I'm gonna test the functionality, power up the bike. I have successfully made that connection. I've noticed that from time to time, some customers have an issue making this connection, and it usually stems from these wires not being bottomed out. So once you test it, if you have no light, make sure that the connection is actually positively made in there. And after you check that, you can move forward. Now we can distribute the bulk here. You have this gray box that needs to be contained within there. You can just shove it up above and then get these components lined back up. And at this point, we can actually get these fasteners and these fasteners back in. We will no longer need the looseness here. So I'm going to start with the ones that had shoulders, the 4mm ones that go over here. Before I clamp down all the way, I ensure that the plastic subtray actually went up onto that shoulder. You want to clamp the shoulder onto the flat and distort it. The shoulder is meant to be concentric with the hole in the plastic. Okay, I'm going to bring this assembly up a little bit, continue shoving that wire in there. Once enough of this wire goes in, then we no longer have excessive slack here. We'll need to get this mounted onto the subtray. There is this tab here that needs to go up above this protrusion. So let's get that lined up here. When you apply pressure to this closeout, it snaps into position. Now the remaining step here will be to use the longer screws that we prepped on the table through the hinge into the bike using a 3mm Allen. Now you can either choose to adjust your license plate angle before mounting the license plate or after. I'm just gonna determine the angle I like here, and I'm gonna perform the lockdown using a 4mm Allen. Go little by little on each side, and then bring it to final torque. And the last step here will be to replace the license plate onto the bike. I typically choose not to take off the red masking from the double stick adhesive on our license plate lights when I mount them. Typically the force from sandwiching the license plate over the license plate bracket is enough to just hold it in place. But if you feel like you'd like the extra security of having that license plate adhesive mounted to the back of your license plate, then you can certainly do so. Tighten this down, making sure that it is centered. And the license plate light is centered. And there we go. License plate light is operating, and this installation is complete. I want to thank you guys for watching. I hope you found this video informative and helpful. If you like what you see here, you can find it at tstindustries.com if you'd like to purchase it. We have these parts ready to go. We have other parts for this bike and other bikes you may have in your stable, so check us out. Thanks again. Leave me a comment. I like hearing from you guys. Peace.